Yeah, just read the thing.
Okay. Hello, everyone. This is a Town of Columbia Financial Planning Allocation Commission special meeting of the budget workshop, Wednesday, April 5th, 2023. The rules of conduct for this hybrid virtual meeting. It's a web-based call. The meeting is operating under the following procedures. This session will be both video and audio recorded. Commissioners and staff will generally remain on mute except when speaking or voting, and will generally keep their video on themselves throughout the meeting. And that's not me because all the members are here in person. If a member of the public creates an audio or video disruption, they may be manually ejected from the meeting upon recommendation of staff or the chair. For public input before the meeting, please email your comments to publicinput@columbiact.org within 24 hours before the meeting.
Thank you. Come over, rise and
What allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Minutes of the last meeting, I had one question. Kelly, what was your suggestion for the capital budget?
Well, I said 1% overall, so and that would have been a total of 50.
I think the minutes
I
are
think the minutes are incorrect. If
okay.
they say 10, I don't think that's correct. I said I wanted 1% overall from Board of Selectmen and capital combined, whatever, however they chose to break that up.
Okay.
Right.
And
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
one of the very minor things, and I think right before Jeff's motion, the minor typo had to do with the title of verb and something. Let's see. It's the third page of the minutes. Yeah, about 2/3 of the way down. Again, very minor, that we would now have raised taxes. It should be taxes within this instead of an ED. Got it. Anybody else comment or? In that case, I knew we approved the minutes with those two minor changes.
Second.
Moved and second, any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Abstain.
No abstention. Okay. We'll get right into it. We left here with the anticipation of having a sort of a back and forth. But maybe we should start with that. What's new, what's reflected in the new?
In this lovely document.
Yeah.
So I went through the expenditures and put in variances that I think would be what money may not be spent in the Board of Selectmen budget by the end of the year. I did not put it in the Board of Ed because we're still working on numbers. They're in a very tight budget this year. So you'll see definitely some variances totaling over $100,000. And also I went through revenue and updated some of the variances, including where I moved the lowest reimbursement to next year and reflected that we're not getting the lowest reimbursement this year, and updated definitely the interest and so that now there's a positive variance of about 399,000 in revenue. I also updated the mill rate page for a 98% collection rate. So that we're now showing reflecting a 28.31 mill rate for next year.
Will you say that last two sentences again? We're kind of fast.
Oh, sorry.
Right
So,
there.
I thought so, but the numbers look different than what I was hearing, so I'm
oh, so
sorry.
yeah, the proposed mill rate, our collection rate is now 98%. And then now the proposed mill rate is at 28.31. And that's without,
Oh, okay, and
touching
then
the
2.44 increase, okay.
yeah, on a 2.99.
Thank you. Questions on that? No,
No,
what are you,
are you sure that, I mean, on page 31,
31,
it says net mill increase 2.44,
It was
percent
2.99.
increase 9.42. It was 2.99, right, but now it's down, right?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Thought I might have an old number.
have you done this before?
I know, but she's saying something different from what my eyes were seeing.
Okay. We're gonna have a discussion, and we had some ideas about proposed cuts to, or changes to the budget. How would you guys like to open that discussion?
Well, does it make sense that we suggested that the town, the board of selectmen and the board of education would at least look at their budgets and see if there was anything that they could do? Would it make sense to hear from them first before we have further discussion?
I said, how would you like to proceed?
That's what I'm suggesting. Would that make sense? I'm asking if everybody thinks that it's better to hear from them before we start
Oh,
talking
I'm not
about it.
gonna pass judgment if that's what you like, and if nobody has objections, where would you like to start?
And one quick thing, I forgot to put my hearing aids in when I left the house. So if I ask a question, it's because I can't hear you. So just to let you know that.
Just say go like this and we'll speak up.
Uh-huh.
Where would you like to start?
Well, I don't see the first selectman, so why don't we start with the board of education?
He's not coming.
Oh,
Mark is-
okay.
Yes, Mika,
All right,
pitch it.
do you want to go first?
Sure. Board of Selectmen met last night and we reviewed the budget and voted to cut $100,000 out of our capital line in the Public Works Department. We actually shifted 125,000 out of our culvert line for saving for future culvert construction, but put 25 of it into the road resurfacing budget and actually cut 100,000 out of the culvert line. So it was 125, we moved 25 to the road resurfacing and cut 100,000 out.
Can I ask a question on that, Mark?
Yes,
Wasn't that 125 supposed to be the engineering study for the culvert?
no, we shifted 200,000 from Hop River Bridge construction since it's now being paid for by the federal government. And we shifted that 200,000 into culvert engineering.
Okay.
So we're gonna engineer 2 culverts so we're ready for the next round of grants. And we'll start saving. That'll take at least probably 2 years before you do construction of the culvert anyway. At least 1 year. So I think,
Depends on the culvert.
Are these $2 million culverts? or three-
no, one's probably a $500,000 culvert and another might be $1 million.
Thank you.
Any idea when that might get done?
I think the key will be, what is the grant possibility looking like in the future? So that's why we want to really focus on the engineering so that we're ready.
And is that something that LoSiP could be used for, like or is LoSiP not for that kind of a thing?
They have LATSIP, which is, I think that's the one they're looking at for bridges. There's one that's specific for bridges and culverts, so they're looking at that first. I have to look further into LATSIP to see. I know we can use it for like hazardous tree removal, and road resurfacing, definitely built town buildings, things like that, but I don't recall seeing culverts.
We have a maintenance garage in our back pocket that we could pay for too. That's what-
Okay, right.
So we suggested to hold off this year, not have that revenue drop.
Well, there wasn't a lot of discomfort that had movement.
No, it was unanimous that the board was comfortable to offer up that $100,000.
Thank you.
Anybody else, IPAC? Nothing on the operating budget, or are there questions on the operating budget, or are you happy with the 100?
No, I'm happy with that. It was even more than what I was hoping for.
Anybody else? So I guess we probably have to vote to have the budget reflect the changes that Mark just outlined for
I
us.
will move to have the budget change to reflect the changes that Mark has just discussed.
Second. I'm sorry.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstention? Okay. Now for the fun stuff. Would you like to say anything, or would you like us to get your questions?
I can start with a brief statement. So hello, everyone. Thank you for having me, Mike Maziarz, Board of Ed Chairman. Before I turn it over to Barb and to our Vice Chair, Christine, who has a few words she'd like to say as well. I'd just like to reiterate that, looking back at our history, this Board of Education, at least, as long as I've been on, has been not only extremely fiscally responsible, but I would argue one of the most fiscally responsible boards in the state of Connecticut, including a 0.0% increase last year, I should say 0.0 last year budget, which I don't think anyone else had. And when we look at the increases and we're seeing the discussions that we're all having around right now, I know you've heard this before, but to keep it in mind, how much of those increases, the overwhelming majority, is around contractual obligations we have no control over, right? Increases in health insurance, including a curriculum that is mandated by the state of Connecticut, that I'm sure you've heard of, that we have no choice on and have to implement one of those choices. And in addition to those increases, which are out of our control, the increases in staffing, which in my mind are a necessity. We are a small town. We like to be a small town, and there's certain things we like about our system, our community, our education. And one of the big things is we have gone up 68 students since pre-pandemic. And in the last 3 years, we've gone up, I believe the number is 74 students, 36 students since the beginning of last year. With a school that currently has 475 kids, those sort of increases cannot continue without an increase in staffing. We don't want huge class sizes, right? We don't want it to get to a point where kids can't get the attention they need, get the support they need. When you have numbers like that, 68 students since, the last 3-4 years, you're gonna have to see increases in staffing if you want to continue to get kids what they need. So when I look at our budget and what we're asking for, I trust Barb in her team and the rest of my board members implicitly. And when we look at what they proposed, we've seen already a ton of things that they feel not only that they wanted, but that they needed, that they cut out to try to do the best they can to keep it as low as possible while still giving the kids they need. So I just want to share my point on that. Thank you, and I'll turn it over to Christine, if that's okay.
Hi, Christine Sposito, Vice Chair for Board of Ed. I submitted a letter, wasn't sure if I was gonna be able to talk, so I did submit it through that website. I'm curious to see if anybody else has submitted letters as well, but, so I'll read you whatever. So I'm writing to you to voice my support for the Board of Education budget as it was presented on 3/15/23. FIPAC has asked the Board of Education to present to them a budget that does not have any fluff in it. To honor that request, last year we presented a budget requesting a 0% increase, and we're still asked to cut $200,000. This year, we're again asked to cut $200,000. When asked why this particular amount, one member said, "I would be embarrassed to go to the town to say we didn't ask anybody to cut. And everybody should be contributing something to get a reasonable tax increase. I understand the need to work together with the town and the community to keep taxes as low as possible, which is why we continually do our best to present a fair and reasonable budget. This year, we presented a budget that included cuts totaling $511,250. And you can find the details on that third to last page of your presentation that was presented to you on 3/15. I think that would be sufficient proof to show the town that we're being fiscally responsible. Asking for random cuts of $200,000 for for the aforementioned reason undermines the work that we do and challenges the future relationship between Board of Ed and BIPAC when presenting an accurate budget for discussion. I believe what we put forward in the 23-24 budget is what we need to continue to provide high-quality education for our students in a safe school environment. I appreciate you reading my email or listening to me today, and ask that BIPAC consider my thoughts when you're voting forward with your decisions and requests respectfully submitted. Christine Esposito, parent first, taxpayer second, vice chair, Board of Ed third. And then again, I'm curious if there was any other input submitted. Thank you.
You can answer that if you want, Mark.
There was another letter and it's in the board's packet.
But because we don't have.
But we don't have any audience, we don't have any, it's not on the agenda to discuss it, but there was a letter from Laura Zarell.
And that's as much as we will tell you at this point.
Sure.
I can give you a copy of it.
Is there a reaction or question at this
Can I
point?
ask a question
Sure.
first before we go on to anyone else? So you said that there was a $565,000 cut, and I believe that was in the tuition line, if I'm remembering correctly?
No, that's
It's
not.
spelled out for you. on the-
List of things on the wish list that they chose not to.
It was reductions made, it's in the.
Oh, those are things
From
you
the
wanted and you didn't
original
put in,
budget.
so they're not cuts from
Things that
last year.
we, things
You
that
said-
we needed and then said we can prioritize.
No, but I thought you said there were cuts from the prior year's budget, so that's not what you were
No,
saying?
cuts from the wish list.
Okay, so there are things you wanted that you didn't put into the budget,
Correct.
and you
Yeah,
call
yeah.
them cuts, okay. And there was a significant drop in the tuition line. Wasn't it? Wasn't it very substantial this year?
Yeah.
Yeah, I believe that was.
I'll go look it up, thanks. So you can go.
Any other questions? You have another, Jeff?
So from the tuition line from last year, they had an extra 300,000 for the high school outplay placement, and they spent, what was it, 210 or 220 of that, and gave us back 80,000. That's back into the town. We gave the town back 80,000. And, you know, the last presentation that you gave us, we found that out at the tri-board meeting. We've also heard that it's, you know, cut right to the bone and we need all this and that too. So, you know, we're looking at numbers that come back to the town every year, year after year.
Was there a question in there?
No, I don't think did I get a question out of that?
I didn't think so.
Sorry.
You're welcome to.
You look like you were waiting for a
Expenditures are,
response.
Discussed
We
each
did that.
board of meeting, to see where the money is spent.
No, I do have something that I said, and that years and years ago, we had an agreement with the Board of Ed that any tuition refunds we get would automatically go into the general fund. Now, has that been happening? Did that happen this summer? Last summer, I think we did get some refunds, right?
So I think sometimes the extra would go back to the town, but I think, correct me if I'm wrong, that if there's a line in the budget that ended up being higher, some of that money would cover, you know, she would move lines around so the budget would balance, is that?
So, I mean, given, I think I spoke to that in the tri-board meeting, maybe,
At a previous meeting.
that people, I think we had new people aboard and they hadn't always adhered to the tuition agreement. But that was because they were new, they didn't know about it, so as a rule, it has happened and been adhered to. I think there was one slip up, but that was a hell of an inexperience.
I guess, I know that the Board of Ed has been asked to cut, I think it was $200,000. And listening to the presentation that Barbara did and everything else that has been shared, I agree that you have a budget without any fluff in it. And I think it's a mistake to put up an arbitrary figure and say, we want you to cut this. That's not how it should work. I do think, because we have such a large fund balance, that we can probably take money from the fund balance and have a 0 mill rate increase, and I'll go over that.
and leave the education budget as it is. But I think it's a huge mistake. I don't think, I talked repeatedly about how when people come to these meetings, whether it's a board of selectmen, five pack or whatever, that someone sits and watches people trying to make good decisions that are best for Columbia residents. I don't think throwing out an arbitrary number to cut is a way to make a good decision. That's how I see it. And I also think education is terribly important. I think most residents in Columbia agree with that. I'm comfortable that you have a good budget and that you're not overspending. So I think that we should not touch the education budget. Barbara, you threw out, or somebody threw out how essential the staff increases are. I think you had some questions on that, or?
I did, I talked to her aside, I talked to Barbara aside, the impression I got was while of the ones that are essential, this math teacher was the most essential compared to the other, the two part-timers you were talking, there's two part-timers?
There's two half-time.
Yeah, two part-timers, so two making a full-time position is not necessarily as essential, but the math teacher, which was the one personnel that you indicated based on our conversation, it seemed to be the most essential between the two as far as cuts go, would be the two part-timers that would be the most easily ones to do away with, as opposed to the math instructor, who would be the more essential, due to the fact that they are trying to increase their math numbers and increase math proficiency. Thank you.
So I don't know that I'd say the two half-times are not essential. I think that we talked
I'm talking
about.
about compared to the math instructor.
So what we did do
What
is,
were the two half-times? Remind me.
one is a speech language pathologist, it's our current 1.0 speech language pathologist. Her caseload is almost double of the norm. And the other is a half-time PE/health teacher.
Or just to continue on that, right? To have a speech pathologist who, has a caseload almost double, that makes it nearly impossible to be able to fulfill IEPs and recommendations from PPTs and to stretch that person super thin. So, and the other piece being, we have two PE teachers currently for 475 kids, which is where the 0.5 comes from. When you talk about, being able to address all the needs of the students, providing a nice, environment, safe environment in class sizes and class loads, that's another big piece to it. So, and contracts.
So one thing we went back to the table and we looked at staffing. I was able to reduce a staff member from a 1.0 to a 0.7 for a slight savings. I can offset that with a grant I'm writing. Fingers crossed we'll get that grant. We'll know, by the end of April, but so a 0.3 position was decreased a little bit.
So how much of a savings would that be?
It's about 30,000.
From the budget that you originally presented.
Okay, Bev went through and found some stuff on the town side. This time of year, we're usually finding tweaking numbers. Is there not any of that on your side?
So I mean, we want to be 100% transparent. We reduced that one position. We found fuel went down about $10,000. Insurance went down altogether. We did find about $95,000 to $99,000 by squishing these things up. At the Board of Education meeting on Monday, an agenda item came up to reinstate the school security officer. So with that savings, it was voted upon to put that position back into the budget, so it would be a wash. Bottom line didn't change. So with the tweaking, we were able to add back the school security officer.
So you are hiring a school security officer. I think that's a good thing. Wait a minute. You tweaked out 99 and put 60 back and the bottom line didn't change.
So we tweak it, we think it's gonna be about 75,000, 80,000 for this security officer. This year, next year it'll go down a little bit, because we don't have a startup
Okay.
cost.
So this number is,
About 63 and then another 10,000 in startup, so it's about 75 the first year, probably 60, 65. It may be slightly lower because typically a school security officer does not require benefits because it is a retired police officer who usually is having benefits through his or her retirement from the state. Which we lost. The library at your service.
how do other towns staff that position? And the women,
So some towns, Scott had presented in the past, some towns do what's called an SRO, but those are towns that have a police department. And then the town splits the cost of that, and that cost was actually higher.
Yeah, that would be approximately 180,000 typically, because you're hiring a state trooper. But as Barbara said, the caveat there is the town has to have a police force to do that. It's not out of the question that Columbia could create a very small police force to make that happen, but the new legislation would require a significant number of hoops to jump through, and it's fairly expensive to make that happen. So when you're hiring an SRO, a school resource officer, you're hiring a state trooper, and again, that's typically in the 160 to 180 range. The alternative is to hire an armed school security officer, which by legislation must be a retired police officer. And that's the costs that we're looking at, which are much less expensive than hiring a state trooper. And you're not required to have a police force in order for that officer to begin working in the district. They essentially are an employee of the district, whereas a school resource officer is typically an employee of the town as part of the police force.
so the salary is still around 60 and there's other costs.
Correct, yeah.
Are those recurring?
Right, we estimated the salary between 63 and 75, again, depending on experience, and whether they choose benefits or not, and approximately 10,000 startup costs, which would not be a continuing cost period.
And, can I?
Yeah.
And how many other schools, K through 8, or any variation of that, have this position?
So if you, take a right on your Route 66, Ram, all of Hebron schools, both of the schools, Marlboro, East Hampton, and all in Middletown. You turn on 85, every school in Glastonbury. If you're going this way, Wyndham,
Exponentially larger than ours, but so I was thinking generally.
smaller one, I mean, Hebron's pretty small, Marlboro's small.
Andover, Bolton.
Andover is
So does
looking
the
into,
Andover school have one?
not right now, but it is something that every district pretty much is looking into and having their boards of ed at least begin the process.
Andover is K through
So
6.
so is Hebron, so is
Marlboro.
Marlboro.
Can I say something?
Sure.
I'm on the local juvenile review board that covers, this Barbara, that covers Columbia and over Hebron and Marlboro. And what we hear is cases where kids have been arrested for various things. It's usually relatively minor. But a lot of these kids also have mental health issues. And over the past couple of years, based on the kinds of cases that we have heard, there is a need for a security officer. And as Barbara mentioned, Andover, Hebron, and Marlboro all have those. And Columbia needs it too.
Is it to
So
protect from external threats or internal threats?
I can't go into details. All I'm saying is it's a threat to the school.
And
This is all confidential information in the school. I mean, in the JID, and matter of fact, I might even be violating some confidence by even saying what I'm saying,
Well,
but it's a threat.
Let me interject. I'm supporting what you're saying. I coach a little, I used to coach a little bit at Wyndham, and I had some interaction with the SRO. They also do a lot of unofficial counseling in order to prevent, somebody who's headed in the wrong direction. They step in and try to not let them go too far in that direction. So it's a little more than putting on the cape and shooting somebody. There's a lot of counseling. And they interact with the kids. So it's somebody else for the kids to look up to and almost be a father-like figure and to somebody you could be afraid of. And they should behave. Okay, Dave, you can finish.
No, I mean, it's simply that there's a need for a security officer, and actually, if Florida wasn't doing this, I would be pushing them to do it. So, I think it's necessary.
I wish it was a conversation, as we said before meeting the other night, that we did not have to have. And there wasn't something for me for it, but, the reality is what's going on right now in the world. And, we got together and feel like this is the, best way that we can right now, in a fiscally responsible way, to be as safe as possible. There's nothing, no fail safe or anything, but, to make that school as safe as possible for the staff and for the students. It's something that obviously, as we talked about, and you can go back and see Scott's presentation on the increases in these occurrences happening at schools. Say nothing of mentioning the other towns that are increasing this and looking into this, but, we feel pretty strongly about it.
So there is a plan in place now.
Anything else on that? Well, we had some people who were inclined to make a motion, or minds changing at all, or are we dumbing down? Are we getting anywhere?
I'm
Think
just
about that.
disappointed that they were able to find savings and they did do this, this school resource officer 2 weeks ago, and now they do because they found the savings to do it with instead of adjusting their budget. So that disappoints me.
Yeah, I have the same, well, I think more tactfully than you do, but
I appreciate that.
we sort of, the question obviously comes up, why did some of the other increases or changes outrank the security officer before? But that's not a real question, so don't try to answer it. It's just a confidentially.
I think if you'd like, I could have one small.
If you wanna-
Yeah. I can tell you that the security officer has been a discussion for us for quite some time, and even during this budget process, Barb and I have had communications about what we want to do to try to get this in. So regardless of it showing up or not, beforehand, this was going to be a discussion leading up to it. Regardless, it's been a discussion that it unfortunately has been going on for some time at all schools, but ours as well. So this is the way that it was able to work out financially for us, but I think I would be remiss if I said that this wasn't in our hearts in need.
Stephen, you haven't said anything, any thoughts?
I think we need to be realistic about what we say and what we advertise. Talking about budget cuts totaling $511,250, when according to the page 2, it states that the town budgeted allocation is an increase of $730,820, or 5.67%. So that your lot list was 1.1 million higher when we started. And you cut 511 of stuff that we didn't have, we wanted, so there was no cutting really, it was just an increase of $583,000. That's not a 0%, that's $583,000 budget increase. I get that. If the school is growing, we have to be realistic, and we have to, if somebody's gonna go to the townspeople and say, geez, you need to raise the mill rate to some very high rate, then, you know. No, I don't have a question in this. Now, you asked if I had anything to add, my personal.
Anything
feelings.
to add?
I think, you know, the board of selectmen did it, squeezing out $100,000. You know, yes, a number, 200,000 is arbitrary. Due diligence and trying to find something anywhere, scraping under a rock, delaying, holding off something is important. I did an analysis on distribution of mill rate changes since 1992. 5 years, they were negative. 9 years, there was 0%. 12 years, there was 1 to 5%. 4 years, there was 5.1 to 9.8. Only 3 years was there a greater than 10, and that was what was being proposed last week. So I think that would make us not doing our best to keep the townspeople from having massive tax increases. If anybody wants this, I made 10.
Your analysis you're gonna share with us?
Here, it's not an analysis, it's just numbers. Here. Pass that down there. Thank you. Share here. Might just interest people that, you know, if we're part of a group that's going to make a large mill rate increase. And you can barely see it, there's highlights of, on the year of the rebound years. Every 5 years, I guess it's mandated by the state that you have to do a rebound. So you can see that there's a drop, and then a big increase shortly thereafter. So.
I wish the company would share that.
Can I say a couple things?
Sure, Dave.
First off, Steve, when you're saying that the Board of Selectmen cut the budget 100,000, they cut it from capital budget, not their operating budget. And the Board of Education simply does not have capital projects currently funded, so it makes it a lot more difficult for them because we are very fortunate that we have a very large fund balance. We have about $4.5 million. If we take 2 mils worth from that, which is about 1 million,
1.16.
right? So then that would get the mill rate increase down to 1 mil. I mean, the other thing that complicating all this is HVAC. And we have to budget 1.8 million for that.
Right.
But we're gonna be getting half of that back later in the year, if we end up even doing it. Now with the, that, correct me if I say anything stupid.
Can I make a correction today? I got an email, Mark did too, we got it, and I sent it to Barb and Scott. Unfortunately, we got, there was a press release this afternoon that Columbia is not on the list for the HVAC grant.
Oh, it's not? So then we don't need to
So it's a mute
budget the
point.
$1.8 million.
Well, we weren't gonna budget that anyway. That was a town voted transfer that was pending approval.
So there's a
But-
transfer pending too, so.
What?
So there's a town meeting on the 18th, just to update everybody before we get too far into the HVAC. So last night, the Board of Selectmen approved to go to a town meeting on the 18th to put $499,000 into an HVAC air quality control project to get the project started, to get engineering and design and the electrical upgrade, plus
We can keep going.
sort of keep going, and also just to add more into this, there's another $58,000 going for two needed capital projects at the school. How much?
57.
57. So the total is gonna be $556,000,
Sorry, that's gonna be the town meeting?
yes, on
Okay.
the 18th. So you'll have to plan for that, and then you're looking at your numbers.
Okay, anyway, getting back to the fund balance. If we
take 2 mills out, $1.1 million. And include HVAC, $1.8 million.
Now that's not.
It is not even, yeah.
Oh, we're not gonna do that, okay. So we actually would have enough money to take, actually, what we'd have to take is about 2.5 million, because the tax collection rate is now 98%, which is about $500,000. I'm pretty sure.
$75,000, I believe.
Yeah.
That 0.5%.
Well, wait, if you add on the 100,000
It's not enough.
from the savings from the capital budget. Anyway, we have enough in the fund balance to take enough out, so we don't have to have a mill rate increase. It'll be a 0% increase.
I don't think so.
So we're not
We
talking
still-
about a big increase.
But we're not done talking, we're not on the point where we're gonna talk about how we're gonna fund this, we're just trying to figure out what the budget is gonna be. And then we can talk about funding it.
We can talk, we can do that too, but that will maybe having a better understanding of our financial position would influence how tough you wanna be.
Yes, my next question is to Ernie or to Bev. When do we have to have a vote on the budget? Last
From
day.
here?
What's the meeting schedule? Let's see.
So there's a
When's the
tentative,
latest
there's
date
a
we can-
tentative meeting next week. But you have a public hearing on the 26th, and usually I think you motion to send the budget to the public hearing for public input before you make a final decision to send it off to the town meeting in May.
All right, so if we,
So you have really next week, but we have to get the flyer
could we
out.
also hypothetically have the 19th as well?
No.
No, because we need to advertise what's being proposed, so.
When we
we have-
start talking about delays, trying to figure out
The
what
18th,
what
because
we
I want to
hope-
see what that's.
what do we hope to accomplish in the delay period? No, I'm not saying it's a bad
I
idea.
think there was a question of what the town voted on, but.
That's why I'm trying to figure out what the heck's
There's a
gonna
vote
happen
on
on
you
the
said on the
18th.
18th.
I would assume it's probably, I would make the assumption it would pass.
I won't make that assumption.
I would.
Yeah.
They always pass.
What difference does it make?
I don't know what's gonna,
What difference does it make to the budget?
And that would be next year's budget, not this year's, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
The town meeting is for this year's
This
budget.
year.
Oh, so it would reduce the
Fund
fund
balance
this year.
this year.
correct.
So we'll go down. Okay.
So you have to make an assumption, 556,000 less in the proposed year-end fund balance.
All right. I mean, I do want to address one other thing before we go on to talk about how we're gonna fund the budget, is that there's been a lot of discussion about how we come up with arbitrary numbers and that's not appropriate. Aside from the fact that you know that we can't tell the Board of Education how they can spend their money. But what I have done is I have looked at history, and as long as I've been involved in for many years, I think prior to that, there's always been excess in the budget at the end of the year. And sometimes we have raised taxes to fund the budget. And there's stuff at the end of the year that comes back and goes into the undesignated fund, and the undesignated fund is growing. And when we raise taxes to do it, so I'm not comfortable raising taxes when there's often, I think without exception, maybe only 1 year when there was an extraordinary special education need that was unanticipated. There's always been something extra at the end of the year, and I think that's good budgeting because you estimate on the high side. But I also don't think we should be raising taxes when we asked if they could find a way to make some savings, and they did. They found 96,000, and then they found some other way to spend it. So they were able to find some savings, and they found something else that was equally important to them. So I just don't think it's fair to say that we're arbitrarily coming up with random numbers. We can't tell them specifically what they can cut. And we are being responsible because historically, I would say with 98% certainty, there will be extra money in the budget at the end of this year. They will not have
At
spent
the end of
every
this
dollar
year?
next year. Typically, they do.
Is there gonna be any money left in the education budget at the end of
This year,
this year?
No,
I don't think so.
I don't have any facts and I can tell you what's about.
We also don't know how adjustments were made, because we don't have that, you know, I think next year we're gonna have, every time a transfer is made, we'll get that, and go to the board of selectmen. I assume that that's gonna start being implemented, so we'll know adjustments to the budget in real time.
I should have enough somewhere. You know how I get to that.
The thing that, the point I was trying to make earlier is that we don't have to raise taxes without the budget, with the current budget as proposed. It can be a 0% increase or a 0 mill rate increase.
Yeah, but where does that leave you, Dick?
What's that?
Where does that leave you?
With that leaving? I mean, with the fund balance?
Yeah.
If we don't have to worry about HVAC,
Well, we do have to worry about this.
well, then, with the 1.8 million in HVAC, it leaves us with about 9% undesignated fund balance. Way back around 2008, when we took money from the fund balance to pay for a new school roof, we took about $2 million from this year, we went down to 7%. So, I'm okay with having 8 or 9% in the fund balance. I mean, we are fortunate because we have a very, very large fund balance this year. So I'm okay with that. And I think that's a good way to keep the mill rate increase there.
Okay, this is an updated version of the thing that I threw out for discussion last week. And I hope it reflects at least close to the new fund balance and if you just look at the 98% collection rate column, last year we were talking about options, we don't need to do that anymore. What you just said, Dick, if you go down to this point, right here, you're talking about a 0% mill rate increase. Of course, the number I have there would call for the use of $1.4 million. We have 0.1 million from the board of selectmen, so an additional 1.3 million would have to come out of the fund balance to make what you're saying happen.
And if you then go on to your second column, right, so we project at the end that there's gonna be 4.37 if we didn't take any money out.
Well, that talks about if we don't get the grant, so, yeah,
Right.
we are in that column now.
Right.
And the difference is, instead of 400,000 and 125, we're talking about 499,000 and
50, so 550 instead, or 560 instead of 525.
Yeah, so
as you
taking
have
a
here
little
so
bit
far.
out of there, we're talking 4.3 mil,
Yeah,
4.3 million. Or-
and if we took out $1.3 million, we'd have 3 left.
So that's what I said, meant when I said, let's just step back and take a quick look. Now, if you want to talk about the budget some more, that's fine. For the 100,000, if you sweep another 100,000 somewhere out of the budget, if you still want to shoot for close to zero, you're still talking about 1.2 million out of the fund balance. You're talking, whatever you said, plus 100.
The other thing to consider, and I know this is kind of like, but whenever we increase the school budget, that is a permanent increase. And while I do agree with Barbara that you have done a lot to cut back, and I appreciate that, but there are things in here that are going to be one-time expenditures. Such as the replacement of the English curriculum, the replacement of the math curriculum, because I doubt we're gonna be making those replacements again next year, right?
Well, that you replace the curriculum, but then there's always the usables that go along here,
Yeah.
but it won't be that.
But it won't be that high. So there's a big percentage, at least about 100 grand, at least, that's gonna be a one-time expenditure for this year only, but we're gonna be stuck with whatever we increase the school's budget. So what I would ask, if it's possible, is if there's any way you guys can go back and see what cuts you can make. If it's 100K, or 200K. I mean, I know it's arbitrary numbers, and that's why I don't like giving designations, because there are things in budgets like how much are paper clips, things of this nature that are part and parcel of these things. But I mean, I continue to insist, and I said it last time about the recession and all those other things, and that the economic times are very uncertain. And that is gonna affect the budget, whether people believe it or not. So, and it is gonna affect the town. So I think it would be, I just want to see what we can get. If it's too much pain on the school, then it's too much pain and we won't do it. I'm just asking to see something.
One thing I did want to add, may I?
Yes.
Is even when the budget is voted on and it's set, we constantly and throughout the year continue to look at a way to not spend it all. So for instance, a grant might become available that we had no idea, it wasn't announced, the state just gets a grant, like right now, there's a grant out for mental health specialists. So we pursue every opportunity we can. Hopefully I can write that grant and that can offset maybe a school psychologist, maybe the social worker. We also do things like keep, you know, we talk about high school, we have to be on top of a high school student. Some people will move out of town and yet we'll still have to pay tuition for them. We work with, he's like a retired police officer who does our private investigation. You know, by spending, I think we spent $1,500 this year for him. I think we saved $65,000. So we don't just get it and say, all right, we're gonna spend it. We continually look to keep saving. And I want you to recognize that as well.
I appreciate that. What I'm saying is that and I feel bad because I don't think this whole experience would be nearly as dramatic if it wasn't for certain statutory limitations, at least for me, I can't speak for others. But like, if it wasn't for certain statutory regulations coming out of Hartford regarding like the fact that because there will be some years that you have asked for a decrease. I bet the town got sued once because of the fact that we tried to make this, and this was no fault on anyone's part. I think that the school was like, we don't need the money. We only need this much, and they cut their budget, and the state said you can't do that. And there are certain things in your budget, like I said, that at least $100,000 from when I've looked at it, that are going to be one-time expenditures. Yes, there are certain things like the salaries and things of this nature that are going to be permanent things, and that's not going to change. There's nothing anybody can do about that. And those will eventually become essential. I mean, there are portions of it that are going to be essential. But if what budget we increase to, even when you don't need it next year, we're still, my understanding is we're still stuck with that number.
Yeah, I think that's law, but what you have to keep in mind, and I hate to sound like I'm on their side, but
Like, unless I'm misunderstanding it.
no, you're right on, but what I was about to say is you pointed out the $100,000 is there and we're stuck with it forever. Okay, if that's not a recurring expense, ask her what's gonna happen to her salary line next year. It's gonna be more than $100,000. So the fact that you fear that you're gonna be stuck at this year's level, you're gonna be right back there next year with the contractual salaries. That's like 150 to 200,000.
Well, I just looked at the numbers as far as there's probably a lot more in there that really, realistically speaking, and plus the fact I don't, like I said to you before, and that's why I said the budget, that as far as the recession goes, is gonna have an impact. Because the cost of services and goods are gonna go
You
down.
keep saying that, but you don't have a way of quantifying it, so I'm not gonna sit here in fear.
We just simply talked about the oil prices dropping.
Yeah, okay.
That literally is quantifiable.
Okay,
So lastly, for us to drop the budget by $100,000, $200,000, $300,000, that has to be positions. I can go into all of we can look at all the non-educational lines. And it does not total that much.
well, let's switch gears and talk about technology for a second. The new, not smart boards, but what are they?
Are we gonna make English?
Say again,
Promethean boards.
what's the plan for overhauling what you have now? Is that 1 year or 2 years? or-
But, our IT folks have a replacement plan. So right now, they're just focusing on the Promethean boards to replace smart boards at this point. But then Chromebooks have about a 4-year life.
Well, wait a minute, you have X number of smart boards. Is that gonna be a one-shot replacement deal? 1 year, everything this year, or is that spread out over,
So it's been spread out. We don't have a, there's rooms already with Promethean boards.
okay, so it's a gradual implementation. Not trying to trick you. That's the question. Judy, you thought you were gonna get the hide, didn't you?
No, no.
Yeah, I don't remember you having any issues, but I always love hearing you talk, so you don't have to.
Well, like last week I had said that I was okay with the budget where it was. And therefore it implies it's okay to take the money from the fund balance. But I can't reconcile the increase in the mill rate. I can't, I'm not comfortable with that big of an increase. I would like to see instead of an 11%, something in the middle.
See what?
Instead of the, mill rate increase being around 11%, I would like to see us land somewhere more in the middle between the region.
Yeah, well, that's what the chart will show you that.
Right, yeah.
If you're gonna do that strictly by using the fund balance plus the
Right, no, I
100,000, you could pick a number and say, let's aim for that. I mean, that's what Dick was saying. His suggestion was, let's do this, go whole hog, but that would knock the fund balance down to whatever Kelly said.
Is it $3 or something?
3.
Close-ish.
So that's an option. I mean, sources are, if we're done with the board of selectmen, we're either done with the board of ed or not. And even if we're asking for 100,000, we're talking about the difference between taking, well, 100,000, that's free fund balance. I don't know what our target is. To figure out who still thinks we should go back and ask for more or demand more for.
I mean, my thought is we asked them, they went in good faith. And they analyzed it, they made their decision and their decision is made. I don't think that if we.
If we ask them again,
I don't think it's gonna change. They're not gonna change it if we ask them to look again. Because we asked them to look and they did look. And so I don't think that it does any good to further delay the process. I think we should just proceed.
No, I mean, I think we can ask them again, one more meeting, it could hurt anybody.
well, is it
Okay,
gonna benefit anybody? It's the flip side.
I agree with
I
you.
mean, I love looking at you people, but I like it to be productive in addition to being just awed by beauty, so. Where are we going, folks? I'm not trying to bully you, I'm just trying to say, if there's something we think we could accomplish, let's meet again. Let's stretch out the schedule as long as we need to, but at some point,
And we, at the very least, if we want you to stay going, we can vote on it.
well, let me interrupt you.
I'm sorry.
Just remember that the process here is we can vote on something, put it in place to be sent to the public hearing. The night of the public hearing, we get to vote on what is sent to the annual budget meeting. So you do have another chance to modify anybody's budget. If we want to do that, I guess for expediency, is to keep these two people in mind, they have a lot to do.
That's what I'm saying, we can vote on sending the town's budget to the town meeting.
Well, yeah, to the public hearing.
Yeah, yes, the public hearing.
Okay.
And so where are we? Is there anybody besides or who's totally uncomfortable with the budget as presented and the explanations as presented. I mean, if there's something specific we need to hammer out, let's do it. But. Helps.
Well, yeah, no, and I've been quiet up to this point, so just listening. We got the $100,000 from the Board of Selectmen. We've asked the Board of Ed for two. I've been listening to Dick over there on all these points, so what I would propose we do is, instead of the two from the Board of Education, we like to take 100, drop it by 100. So that means 200,000 that we're gonna cut total from the budget. And then I'll go along with Dick and I'll use the fund balance to shore up the rest and present a 0 mil to the town.
So you're proposing that we ask, or that we cut the.
We cut the Board Ed by 100,000, the Board of Selectmen, we already cut, and they
Yeah, but
acknowledge
it's
that.
different. They cut capital.
So that's
They
okay.
didn't cut the.
Listen, we've all got to share the pain if we want to push it to the taxpayer.
Well,
I disagree with cutting
Well, that's,
the.
we know that, we know that, that's okay, we can.
okay, let's look at the practical side. You see those people?
Sure.
Right now, they're neutral. I don't know if they're parents or not. But if you just cut that 100,000, you know what's gonna happen? They're gonna take out their resource officer. And then they're gonna tell all the parents to come and.
You know, Ernie, if they take out the resource officer, they took it out, it's on them. There are other places they could find the money.
We are here to represent the people. At this point, if you want to, what do you think the average Colombian citizen would say? I know most of the older people would say, get rid of the school. But that's not practical, right? I mean, we have a lot of older people who have a different set of values, but right now, everybody's thinking about Nashville. Nashville.
Nobody's suggesting taking out the resource officer.
That's their choice, not ours.
I understand that, but what I'm saying is that
So many
you don't follow what I'm saying.
Yeah, no, I.
No, I
understand what you're
understand
saying.
what you're saying. I'm just saying that no one's suggesting that, and I'm not even sure they're suggesting that.
And I think
Well, you
they're
asked,
not suggesting.
there they are.
Exactly.
Ask them what they would do if you cut $100,000, just ask them.
Well, they said personnel, but that doesn't, they've already incorporated, that the personnel they could very well cut are the two positions.
Ask them if
You know,
we make you
they
cut
need to get-
$100,000, would you cut the resource officer and sick all the townspeople on that? So you say, be honest, you say yes.
Go back to the Board of Ed decision.
But what would you do? You sick the people on us, wouldn't you? Be honest.
Board of Ed member here as well, if you don't mind if I speak.
Well, yeah, I do. But I'm married, so I hate, I don't listen anyway.
I figured everyone else got to say in the Board of Ed. I think that we're thinking of this as too contentious, that we're supposed to be competing parties when we all really have the same objective for where this goes. I don't know how much clearer in the Board of Ed's making, we have a very fiscally responsible and conservative Board of Ed. I've heard said, that, our job is to ask for money, your job is to cut the money. I don't think that's the type of not in this meeting, but I've heard said, I'll clarify that. So I think that we're not looking at this as a joint effort and with understanding that you have people who do not want to spend the town's money. Like, we have a board that really just, they want to save money. And that we have a growing population, a significant growing population for the size of our school, and teachers that are very close to above contract in some of the areas. That if we cut that, we're risking other legal issues within the school. And I don't think anyone on the Board of Ed would sick the public on you, but I do think that the public would be upset if that was the thing that was cut on their own without us sticking them on you.
I've had my telephone number and email broadcast before, so.
Well, now I'm curious, so what do you mean by certain, obviously, we're not talking about the resource officers, but you're talking about something else.
Well, so PE would be an example of that, right? The half-time PE
Yeah, yeah.
position. You have teachers that are near contract. In fact, I think we have a couple that are volunteering some time on contract right now. So,
That's why I want to know, get more specific about your.
well, I have to defer to Sarah on that, but I know Kara's spoken to it.
Right, there are teachers have in their contracts planning time. So for teachers to have planning time in their contracts that they have to have, if they don't have it, we do get grieved, sued. They have to have a place for their students to go. So if you're in third grade, you go to gym. That period when your students are at gym, the third grade teacher has his or her plan time.
Okay.
So by cutting specials, we now don't have a place for those students to go. The teachers don't get their contracted plan time. So that is what I think she is referencing.
Yeah, it's really hard to explain. You guys speak to the percentage more, and I know we hear it over and over again, the percentage of that budget that is contracted. There are programs that were offered last year. Project O would be an example of that. It's $18,000, $17,000 or $18,000. Were offered last year that were legitimately cut. So when Christine's saying there were things that were cut, there are programs that were offered last year that will not be offered going forward, even with the budget that's proposed right now. Educational programs that people in town do value, but we know that we have to cut them because of the way the economy looks right now. There are just certain things that we can't do. We have to be conservative about the amount of money that we're spending, so the town doesn't feel that same level of pain.
I have a question, and Bob.
Yeah.
It was mentioned that the school population is growing. What do you project it to grow by next year?
So it's up right now 18%. So
18%? And you have, you have mandated class sizes, right?
but that is legislation that is currently not passed, but that is proposed legislation, so.
So you may have to hire teachers.
Well, we are trying to hire a math teacher. We may next year need an English teacher, a science teacher, a social studies teacher for that. You know, originally that was what was in the budget, an entire middle school team of those 4 core subjects. And then Kara was trying to be very creative and we narrowed it and she's chosen, you know, one essential math person so that different maths can be offered. Algebra next year, in the future geometry, which then helps our students when they go to high school, they already have those math and they can take up to calculus.
18% is pretty high. Pretty big.
Okay, quick canvas. We know where you stand. Kelly would like to cut things, but I think I heard you say that it probably wouldn't be productive to send it back and.
Would not be productive.
Yeah, these 2 guys wanna. So ask them to go back and look again, right, rather than accept what's here.
Well,
It doesn't call for a speech, this is a yes or no. question. You wanna send them back or not?
I want to send them back.
I didn't know.
He does not want to send.
He doesn't want, he just wants to cut $100,000.
Well, I share experience with Dick and they didn't agree.
So he's a man.
So, yeah, no, I don't think we need to send
Canvas.
it back.
Do you think it would be productive to send it back, or do you object or have a problem with, going with what's in front of us?
I don't think it would be productive to send them back. They'll just bring the angry mob back at us.
Judy?
I don't think it would be productive, but if I could have one more sentence.
Okay.
I wish we wouldn't characterize, even in jest, that the school board is going to, you know, create some kind of retaliation against another town committee. I know we're being liked about.
I didn't read it that way, but it's their job to lobby for what they think is best,
Exactly.
and they get that by giving support.
Yes.
That's all I was trying to say.
Well,
in
maybe
my
we
own
can
way.
say it in a less
Yeah,
I agree with you,
dramatic,
Linda.
violent way.
I'm known to have a lack of tact at times, so your point is well taken.
Thank you.
Are you legal to speak?
I don't know.
I don't care. Okay.
I, just as a taxpayer, I've been in Columbia for about 10 years. And we had we have had inflation of approximately 13-14% over the last 24 months. Why the idea, and I'm Republican and fiscally conservative, but why I'm listening to everybody saying we can't go for a mill increase absolutely blows my mind with a 14% increase. Social Security for the year 2022 got approximately a 5.7% increase for its recipients. In 23, an 8.6% increase for its recipients. Our school is growing at 18%. The town is growing. Why you all think that it's so repulsive to have a 1 mil increase just blows my mind. You know, the town I came from 28 years, I don't think we ever had a year where we had a 0 mil increase. But I just wanted to, as a taxpayer, I just wanted to throw that out there.
I'm gonna call clock on you.
One quick reaction to what she just said, and thank you for speaking up. My income is a state pension and social security. My social security went up this past December, 8.6%. My purchasing power is the same as it was before because of inflation.
That's her point.
Right.
That's her point.
When they raise taxes, when people have less spending money, because they're facing inflation, so they have less available resources to spend. That's why we're concerned about it.
Somebody thinks we're in good hands with you running the
No,
meeting. Somebody thinks we're in good hands with you running the meeting. You got an attaboy. It's my wife.
She's trying to get the meeting over.
Okay. My only reaction and to that sort of thing is, as usual, I've been trying to get you guys to look at this from all different angles. What will be the effect on the public? I mean, here's the impact of a percentage tax increase. What will our fund balance be if we do X, Y, Z? You can't just look at how much is social security check on that. I mean, that's a factor. What's the economy likely to be like? You always have to keep that in mind. How are we gonna impact the people that we represent, or the people that trust us to do the right thing? One of the things that we also should be influenced by is look at the size of this fund balance. We never anticipated it would be this high. No matter what we do, our budget will be wrong because things will change after we set this budget. Now, when things go wrong and it's favorable, do you keep raising taxes or do you say, whoa, I guess we're down a little bit on the taxation rate? And right now, I think we're in a position, and it's not our fault, but we were lucky, but we're in a position where we have a lot more of the taxpayers' money than we thought we were gonna have. So if you're in that position, do you raise the tax rate because it's social security checking up? Do you share all this money? I think the idea is somewhere in between, but I think that's what we should talk about now. What is the right balance? I'm not that smart, right? I don't want to get you guys talking, so go.
And I agree. I think we have, because we do have excess at the end of most years over what we projected, I think we have a lot in our undesignated fund. And if we're not gonna give up the $1.8 million, we know that over time we're gonna need it, but I think we should be reducing the undesignated fund as opposed to raising taxes 9%. So I definitely think we should use it, whether we use 100% of it, which I could be persuaded, or whether we use, do a 1.3 million of it.
I think,
I could live with that too, but I wouldn't do less.
I guess I'm thinking that a minimum that we should use would be 2 mils worth, which would be 1.1 something million. But if we increase that by a couple 100,000, I think we would still have a fund balance of 8 or 9%, and it would be a 0 mill rate increase with the current budget proposals.
Took you a long time to agree with what Kelly said.
I don't, remember, I don't have my hearing aids.
Well, I think you just agreed with Kelly. I think you should know that.
Art, I know you think the world's against you, but talk.
No, I don't think the world's against me. No, I'm partially towards both sides. I mean, I just think, I don't think sending it back for another discussion would be a waste of time, but that's just me. Because I'm just looking for, at this point, some kind of, because my big concern is, like I said before, like this, you know, there are a lot of things that have happened right now as far as increases in the school, as far as increases here, as far as inflation. I mean, there are a bunch of factors here that people are thinking are permanent factors. They're not permanent factors.
In your opinion.
No, just in general, objectively, they're not permanent factors. For instance, we had this huge influx of people as a result of COVID coming from the cities, getting out of the cities into our town. We have certain other factors that we're just assuming are going to continue down this line. And we have assumed that we're going to continue to have inflation when Jerome Powell, Fed, is trying to do what he's doing.
But I think Artie's point, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but we can't speculate too much. I mean, we can't speculate too much. We can only deal with the budget we have in front of us and the economy that we have right now.
Yeah, I understand.
So I think that I'm just reiterating what Ernie said. That was his point.
Okay, have I been looking at the wrong column? I guess now. The 98% collection rate, I don't have enough of the transfer here to get down to 0.
No,
Okay. Just so we understand, if we're looking at the right numbers.
in $1.4 million, but that's really no $1.3 million because we already got 100 from the town.
Gotcha. Oh, man.
Yeah, I'm gonna stick with, a minimum of 100,000 for the BOE.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
I'm gonna stick with the 100,000 for the BOE,
Okay.
and that brings us down to 1.2.
Okay, let's resolve that. I think we had a 5 out of 7 that would vote to send the Board of Ed budget to the hearing unchanged. Is that my understanding? If so, let's have a motion.
I move we send the Board of Ed budget to the hearing unchanged.
Second.
And that unchanged means that we're collecting the changes of the realignment.
Judy, could you speak a little bit louder? I'm sorry.
I said, I move that we send the Board of Ed budget to the hearing as it is.
Just to prove it as presented, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, as presented.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'll make sure I'm in my hearing.
Move in second. I think we had discussion about.
Well, and to clarify, it's the one they voted on Monday,
Yeah,
not
that's what I
one
said.
previous, right?
Yeah, the shift in the.
Yeah, that's good.
Bottom line side. Okay, without further ado, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Okay, so we have Board of Ed budget here. With slight modifications. Now let's talk about target mill rate or mill rate increase, or however you choose to look at it, what we should do.
You want to go on the town?
We didn't?
I thought we did.
We
I
did
thought
vote
we
on the
did.
town.
You did a vote?
Yep,
Yeah,
we
okay.
did vote, yeah.
We don't have a vote.
You didn't have a motion?
You just agreed that it was okay. It was a vote.
You didn't vote to move the town operating capital as presented to the.
I don't.
I thought that was what we were, that's what we intended.
You had that
we had.
discussion.
No, we did have a vote.
We had a vote.
Yeah, they
You just
did,
made a
they
motion.
just made a motion.
No,
No,
No, that
she's
was.
saying the
You
town.
just did the Board of Ed.
Board of Ed.
Oh, Same exact
No,
motion
not the
for
town. I moved for the town though, and it never happened.
Right.
That was my motion, it just never
That's
happened.
right. Take a motion.
Time out. We made a motion right after he presented
Yes,
to
right.
accept.
Yes, but
I
it
don't
never
think you
got
voted.
As
voted on.
adjusted.
We never voted.
We never voted, no. I made the motion,
Who seconded?
nobody said, I don't, did you second it?
Yeah.
Well, we never
Jeff
voted
and
on
Kelly
it.
both seconded it at the same time.
It is true, but I don't think we ever voted on it.
And I think you said all in favor and everyone said aye, and that was it. We didn't, I mean.
Yeah, okay, then we
I
missed
missed it,
that.
but yeah.
Oh, I
Is
think-
it-
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, we
I
have,
think it was.
just to make it official, we have a motion, it has been seconded, let's make sure we redo the vote, all those in favor. This is the town capital realignment, with the capital. $100,000, all those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
7-0, that makes it 14-0. Okay, back to target. Again, we're looking at under the 98% collection rate. The impact of,
I like if I may start,
certainly,
0.14%, which would be 1.3 million from the,
huh?
it would be, well, it says 1.4 million, but really, because we took out the 100,000, it's really 1.3 million. Of the undesignated fund, and that would leave our undesignated fund with probably around 3 million. Am I?
Okay.
3 million.
This is where I am, Ernie? At the very last one
Okay,
under
hey.
your columns.
I'm looking at last week's.
Oh, thanks.
There you go.
So am I.
So I just this, that latest motion from last night. Is it?
Yeah,
Which
we-
gave us this
Yeah,
minus 2 mils, it'll be that, but maybe a little more.
okay, go.
So my suggestion was that we target 0.14%, which would mean that we would need to take 1.3 million, not 1.4 million out of the undesignated fund.
Canvas, Dick. Nod your head.
I'm fine with that.
Art. You're stuck with the Board of Ed budget.
No, I'm fine with doing what Dick was suggesting, yes.
One, targeting the 0. Or in that.
He's talking about doing a zero-ish increase.
Kelly is being, yeah.
I don't know what the numbers, because you don't have the numbers,
Yeah, it's pretty close.
That's fine.
no, but
That's pretty
that's the
close to
lowest
what
one we
we
got.
got.
Jeff,
I'm okay with it.
Stephen,
I like the 2.13 option. I think that in this period of inflation, for us to go at 0.14, I feel that we'll have some, if inflation continues, we will have some overages, overspending in the budget. It's not a big difference, but it's just a student spending issue. It's 2% increase.
just a second. Judy,
I think that people are gonna be comfortable with an increase, so I actually agree with Stephen, that we should take a little less out of the fund balance and a little bit more. A little bit more to the increase.
then we had about,
So I had put in the $100,000 decrease. You take out $1.3 million, your mill rate will be 25.91.
I knew that.
Yeah,
It's right there on the paper.
so if you do the 1.1 million, it'll be 26.25. Based on what we have in here today.
So say those two numbers again, 1.1 million,
1.1 million get you 26.25, which is a 0.38%, 0.38 mill rate increase. If you do the 1.3 million, it'll be a 0.04 mill rate increase. Unless you want a zero, then I'd have to put the numbers in back to the dollar.
That's working
so
out.
say that number again, so 0.34 is how much, 1.3 or 1.2?
The point. No, I'm getting all,
Sorry.
sorry. Go back and forth.
We're coming from a different direction. Let's do this. Let's stick with this thing. So
So,
1 point,
so 0.38 is a 26.25.
yeah, right there, 26.25. It's right on the paper. And now you're comparing that to, what? 27.79. Is that how you're getting your difference?
I'm just looking at the number.
Oh, okay.
All right, so
Okay, she's giving you the mill rate increase, the percentage rate increase is equivalent to whatever change. We're using the same numbers, he's just
Yeah.
expressing it a little different.
Yeah, just
So I just want to say, to the point of raising taxes, my concern has been always that statistically, it's extremely likely that there's gonna be extra money at the end of the year in this budget. And we will have raised taxes, just put more money into the undesignated fund.
Remember, we increased it.
Versus if we keep the taxes at the same, we wouldn't have raised taxes and we'll still have a healthy undesignated fund balance, because there's probably still gonna be a little extra
You
coming
mean
in.
money in the general fund? Or money in one of the Board of Selectmen Board of Education budgets?
No, into
General
the,
fund.
it,
General
Oh,
fund.
general fund?
it'll go back to the general fund because they won't have spent everything that they budgeted.
Well,
So it'll
the
come
the
back.
main reason that there's more money in the general fund is that we budget like 98% of.
Okay,
taxes.
I'm
And they
gonna-
collect about
Yeah.
99.
Let's not rehash
That's
on
not
that. We know all those rules, we're down now to trying to make a decision on what's in front of us, we don't need more history. To your point, Tony, this number over here, we're talking about, that's what we would have, and our market has modified it a little bit, but my number is close. 367, it'll be a little different because of the town meetings coming up. Now, if you're talking about taking out 1.3 million, that means you have what, 3 million left in the general fund. Are you comfortable with that or not? So that's what I mean by let's look at it from several different directions, and if I'm comfortable with the tax rate and I'm comfortable with the resulting fund balance.
And I am, so just so you know, from my perspective, that's all I have to say. I am comfortable with 3 million and I am comfortable with taking $1 million for it. And the tax rate increase that would result, so yes.
And I'm also comfortable with that.
But these two are not.
So we get outvoted, that's fine.
I'd like to, apropos of this, raise something I've asked before, and, you know, I still consider myself somewhat new, even though this is my fourth cycle. Compared to some of the folks across the, but is it, and Mark, you might have something you could read. What I would do in this situation would be, there's a minimum percentage fund balance below which we won't go. And that we feel is our rainy day fund, protects us from the things that have happened historically. And I brought that up last year and people said, no, you know, we don't, we just let it fluctuate with what is needed at the time, which I guess is also one way to do it. But it seems to me that there's like a range. You also wouldn't let it get over, it shouldn't be over 25%, or it shouldn't be over, you know, it should be between 25 and 15, say, that would be.
I wouldn't let it go below 15.
Right,
personally.
yeah, that's, yeah, so I agree with that, 15 seems comfortable,
We
but,
never had a formal vote on a percentage range.
This is my
And
opinion.
as far as I recall, I think we said a dollar minimum of $1 million a long, long time ago.
yeah, that's not relevant now.
So we can revisit that as part of our ongoing
Right.
business.
So what percentage would 3 million be? And I don't have my calculator with me this time, so.
Well, right now, it's taking out 1.3, we're estimating about 17%.
3 million would be about 17%.
Does that factor in the HVAC?
No,
No,
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
What we expect to
What
come
we're
out of town
actually
meeting, the
spending.
5 million, it is
I know.
factored
For
in.
that, right, that, yeah.
That's already in his earnings numbers.
Our numbers.
And the right
500,000.
The
hand.
550.
Okay,
I have to figure this out.
too late, you already agreed.
I gotta bring one on here.
We seem to have a majority agreement on 1.3 million use out of the general fund. Is there a motion?
I move that we,
Have them revise the numbers reflecting
a $1.3 million
fund use.
use of the undesignated fund.
I second that.
Moved in second, we've already discussed it. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstention. Okay, budget is set. We accepted what the Board of Selectmen gave us. Now we have all we need to send this to a public hearing. So you guys can do what you do.
And if the townspeople want us to raise taxes, they can vote for it.
Yeah, so
So you'll hear that at the public.
Yeah, that's what I mean, we can change it.
Right.
Paul will be there to show up and down.
Okay, is there anything else we need to do tonight? So,
Next week, so that's
The second week of next week.
You're gonna cancel the. April 12th.
12, which is the tentative anyway.
so, yeah, no more of these workshops.
So we're straight.
The hearing is what day,
April 26th.
what night is that?
Wednesday.
That's good. Yeah, we're still in session.
I'd like to make a comment in response to what the lady back there said, that there might be repercussions. And to tell the truth, I've been involved in town government for 20 years. And I've made decisions that were unpopular, which I felt were a correct decision. And I never worried about repercussions, and I don't think anybody else here would also. So I think that was the wrong thing to say. That's all.
I was responding to his comment about the torches and pitchforks, but they were expecting parents. It wasn't me saying that. Yeah. Yeah, that's not what I said.
Well, anyway, that's what I was thinking.
Okay, her report was directed in my direction, and I had no problem whatsoever, because I know I tease too much, and people don't read more right to maybe read a little more into it than I intended to send out, so we're good. Okay, is there a motion to adjourn?
To adjourn.
Second.
Okay, we're out of here, thank you, folks.
Oh, we adjourned at 8:31.